The sound is unmistakable, a low growl that turns into a ripping thunder, a mechanical roar that soldiers on the ground came to know as the sweetest music in war. They call it simply the BRRRT. It belongs to an aircraft that was never meant to be beautiful, never designed for speed or glamour, but instead built for one purpose only: to fly low, to take punishment, and to bring firepower exactly where it is needed most. From the moment it first entered service, the A-10 Warthog looked like a relic, ugly, slow, a flying cannon with wings bolted on. And yet, decades later, it is still in the skies, still called upon in the darkest moments when troops on the ground are outnumbered and overwhelmed. The Warthog has survived every attempt to kill it off. It has outlived its designers' expectations, outlasted more advanced aircraft, and carved a reputation not just as a machine of war, but as a legend of survival. Ask the soldiers who heard that BRRT overhead when everything seemed lost, and they'll tell you, it isn't just an airplane, it's a guardian angel. Today, you'll discover why this strange, stubborn aircraft refuses to die. You'll hear the stories that made it immortal, the missions where it turned hopeless battles around, the moments where it shrugged off damage that would have destroyed any other jet, and the reason why, even in an age of stealth fighters and drones, the A-10 remains unmatched. This is not just the tale of a plane. It's the saga of an icon, forged in fire, feared by enemies, loved by those it protects. This is the A-10 Warthog. In the tense decades of the Cold War, Western Europe lived under the shadow of a nightmare. Military planners believed that if conflict ever erupted with the Soviet Union, it would come in the form of endless armored columns rolling across the plains of Germany, thousands of tanks, armored personnel carriers, and mobile artillery advancing westward like a steel tidal wave. NATO needed a weapon that could stop that advance, something dedicated not to air superiority or long-range bombing, but to one brutal, specific mission: destroying tanks. That vision gave birth to the A-10. Unlike the sleek fighters of the era, designed for speed and elegance, this aircraft was conceived with very different priorities. It had to be simple, tough, cheap to operate, and above all, capable of flying low and slow enough to hunt armor with precision. Every design choice reflected that philosophy. Straight wings for maneuverability at low altitude, engines mounted high and wide apart to survive damage from the ground, landing gear that could extend even if the hydraulics failed. This was a warplane built less like a falcon and more like a bulldog, stubborn, resilient, and always charging head-on. At its heart was a weapon so large it was practically an aircraft in itself: the GAU-8 Avenger, a 7-barrel, 30mm rotary cannon, firing nearly 4,000 rounds per minute. It was engineered to tear through the heaviest armor of its time. In fact, the A-10 was built around this gun. The airframe exists largely to carry, aim, and supply it. The sound it produces, an echoing BRRRT, would soon become a legend on battlefields. But survivability was the other half of its genius. The cockpit is encased in what pilots call the titanium bathtub, a shell strong enough to absorb direct hits and still keep the pilot alive. Critical systems are duplicated or even triplicated, ensuring the aircraft can fly even when heavily damaged. Many of its control surfaces are mechanical rather than fully electronic, giving pilots a last chance to maneuver if hydraulics fail. It is, in essence, an airplane designed to be shot at and keep flying. Its appearance matched its function: squat, rugged, with a nose dominated by a cannon and a profile that looked more industrial than aerodynamic. To many, it was ugly, almost laughable when compared to the sleek fighters of the day. But its crews loved it. And soon a nickname stuck: the Warthog, a creature that may not be graceful, but is tough, brutal, and impossible to ignore when it charges. The A-10 would spend the 1970s and 80s training for a war that thankfully never came. But questions lingered. Would it really work when the moment arrived? That answer came in 1991, when Iraq invaded Kuwait and the world witnessed the First Gulf War. For the first time, the Warthog went into real combat. Flying low over desert battlefields, it began its work against Saddam Hussein's armored divisions. The results stunned even its designers. In just a few weeks, A-10s destroyed over 900 tanks, 2,000 other military vehicles, and more than 1,000 artillery pieces. Entire armored columns were shredded in hours. Iraqi soldiers began abandoning vehicles at the mere sound of the approaching BRRRT. To them, it wasn't just a gun run, it was a death sentence written in thunder. The A-10 proved indispensable for close air support, answering calls from troops in the heat of battle, swooping in to smash dug-in positions, and then circling patiently overhead until the ground forces were safe. Its ability to loiter for hours and deliver accurate, devastating fire turned it into the soldier's best friend. And when Warthogs returned to base, many came back riddled with holes, sometimes missing large portions of their wings or tail, yet still airworthy. That resilience became as legendary as its gun. By the end of the Gulf War, the A-10 had gone from an oddball relic to one of the most respected and feared aircraft in the world. The ugly duckling of the Air Force had become a war hero, proving beyond doubt that the Warthog's design philosophy was not just theory, it was survival made real. In the chaos of the Gulf War in 1991, few missions captured the essence of the A-10 better than the one flown by Captain Paul Johnson. Deep inside Kuwait, American helicopters were preparing to launch a dangerous rescue mission for downed pilots trapped behind enemy lines. But the skies and the ground were saturated with threats, anti-aircraft guns, tanks, and mobile missile batteries that made the operation nearly suicidal. Johnson, flying his A-10, was tasked with clearing a path. Diving low over enemy lines, he unleashed the Avenger cannon against armored vehicles, ripping open convoys and silencing gun positions one by one. His strafing runs and missile strikes broke apart the defenses, reducing the wall of fire into isolated sparks. By the time the helicopters crossed into hostile territory, the way was clear. They picked up the stranded pilots and escaped with their lives because the Warthog had carved a corridor of survival through the storm. For his courage and skill, Johnson was awarded the Air Force Cross. More than just a tank killer, his A-10 had proven itself a guardian, a shield for those who had no other protection. Over a decade later, in the streets of Baghdad during Operation Iraqi Freedom, another A-10 pilot would etch her name into history. Major Kim Campbell, known by her call sign Killer Chick, was flying a close support mission when her aircraft was hammered by ground fire. In seconds, every hydraulic system failed. Any other aircraft would have gone down in flames. The A-10, however, was built with one last line of defense, a mechanical backup system that allowed minimal control, using nothing but brute force on the stick and throttle. Campbell engaged it immediately. For over 100 kilometers, she wrestled the crippled aircraft, the controls stiff and unresponsive, as if dragging the weight of the entire jet with her bare hands. She brought it all the way back to base, lined up with the runway, and managed to land safely. When the ground crew examined her Warthog, they found it riddled with holes, parts of the tail missing, hydraulics completely shredded, and yet it had brought her home. The story became legendary, a living demonstration of why the A-10 was unlike any other jet in the world. These stories stand as proof, but they also fuel a debate that has raged for decades. Should the A-10 be retired, or should it remain in service? On paper, the arguments for its retirement seem clear. It is slow compared to modern jets, vulnerable against advanced air defense systems, and expensive to maintain in an age where stealth and speed dominate. The Air Force has tried multiple times to phase it out, proposing to replace it with newer, more versatile aircraft. And yet, every attempt has been met with fierce resistance. The reason is simple. No other aircraft provides the same level of close air support. No other platform loiters overhead for hours, and no other jet inspires the same confidence in soldiers pinned down on the ground. For those in combat, the A-10 is not just another airplane, it is a lifeline. Congress, veterans, and active duty troops have fought again and again to keep it alive, and so far, they have succeeded. Beyond the battlefield, the Warthog has taken on a life of its own. The sound of its cannon has become an icon in movies, video games, and even internet memes. To many, the growl of the BRRRT isn't just a weapon, it's a symbol of protection, of reassurance that help is on the way. And yet, its future remains uncertain. Drones now stalk the skies, Precision munitions can strike from thousands of miles away, and sleek fifth-generation fighters dominate headlines. Still, no aircraft has yet matched the A-10 in its unique role. Perhaps one day it will be replaced, but for now, it endures, stubborn as ever. And as long as there are soldiers on the ground calling for support, there will always be someone asking for that unmistakable sound. While warfare changes, one truth remains. When danger closes in, the world still wants the BRRRT. It is slow, it is ugly, and it was never supposed to survive this long. Yet the A-10 Warthog has become one of the most beloved aircraft in history. Its story is not one of glamour or speed, but of grit moments where it absorbed punishment no other jet could endure, missions where it appeared just in time to turn certain defeat into survival. For the soldiers who heard its cannon overhead when all hope seemed lost, it became more than an aircraft. It became a promise, a guardian that would not abandon them. Decades after it first flew, the Warthog still circles above battlefields, carrying with it the echoes of every life it has saved. Its legend is written not in sleek lines or cutting-edge technology, but in scars, in resilience, and in the unshakable trust of those it protects. But as war changes and new machines take the stage, one question remains. Do you believe the A-10 still has a place in the future of conflict, or has its legend already grown larger than the aircraft itself? If you want more stories of machines, battles, and the men and women who shaped them, make sure you subscribe to Umbra Warfare, where history and warfighting come alive.